Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Jamstack Incubation Engineering Update. This is a little progress update. I've been busy all week getting component after component of the new pipeline wizard reviewed and merged, so that's great news. Special thanks to all the reviewers and maintainers so far that have helped polish the feature really up. Now, just to give you a progress update, there's two milestones I want to achieve. The first one is to have the pipeline wizard UI usable as a component. At that stage, it's not visible to the user yet, but it can be used by all contributors to kind of build their own feature on the pipeline wizard. And I had split that part down into 8 MRs so far. We already got 5 of them merged and have another 3 to go. The next milestone will then be to actually use that component in GitLab pages. I estimate that this change could take another 3 MRs. So that's the update for the pipeline wizard. We're almost there, everyone. Now, what else? I've spent a lot of time on those MRs, so the rest of the time I've just experimented a little bit. Some context, one of my long-term visions is a one-click deploy for anything like static sites, runtimes, apps. And the foundation of all of that is a functionality that allows me to determine what kind of repository is in front of me. Like being GitLab, all I know about a repository is that it's a folder of files. But how do I know whether this repo contains an iOS app or a Nuxt static site or a Ruby gem? I mean, I can see what file extensions are in the code. That gives me a hint at the programming language, and we already visualize that. But knowing the language isn't everything. I need to know that this folder full of view files, for example, is a Nuxt.js app. I need to know whether a Ruby app is Rails. So this is what I've been trying to solve. I've built a little prototype CLI tool in Go. So let me demonstrate. If I cd into a working directory that contains a Nuxt.js application, I can now run getRepoType, which is the app. And it immediately gives me a JSON output of the frameworks or app types that it has identified. It can find multiple, so you see how this Nuxt app is simultaneously a JavaScript project. So how does it work? Well, the tool is actually pretty dumb. Its intelligence is this repository of so-called fingerprints. This relies on the fact that most frameworks have some kind of unique file or a unique content of a specific file. Each application type or framework has its own fingerprint file here, where we describe how to uniquely identify this particular framework. For example, the Nuxt.js file. Every Nuxt app has a nuxt.config.js file. So if that file is present in a directory, we can be quite certain that we have a Nuxt app here. In other cases, we might be looking at the contents of the package.json. If we find the next package here, we can assume that this is a Next.js project. If it gets more complicated than that, the fingerprint can define a whole rule set. This expect property in the file is actually a rule object. That's pretty flexible because we can nest rules by specifying an operator. If we use the any-of prefix, we can specify a list of other rules of which any one needs to be true. We can do the same with an all-of or none-of prefix. And since rules can be nested indefinitely, we can build really intricate rule sets this way. This fingerprint repo will be embedded in the binary, so it's super transportable. But a future version could allow the user to specify their own fingerprint repository, so they can identify additional application types. For now, I only have a few application types in my fingerprint repository. This should definitely include a few more, and I'm going to need some extra domain expertise for each of the more unfamiliar frameworks. But if you want to contribute, feel free to open an issue on the project. It's linked below. Anyway, I'm super interested in hearing your feedback on this, even if you want to say, this isn't going to work. Just go to the project, open an issue, and let me know what you think. Right, this was it for this week's update. I hope to see you again next week. Bye-bye, and have a great time.